I see it is you've got two choices. You can either keep pretending like nothing bad's ever gonna happen to you, and then when it does, you're saying, uh-oh, or you can get ahead of what's coming so that when it does, not if, you're ready for it. And you're sitting pretty, sipping on Mai Tais next to the pool, working on that Caribbean suntan, because you got it covered. So folks, it's time for you to learn the truth about money. It's time for you to take back control of your money so that you are ready for what's about to happen. By doing that, you're setting yourself up for absolute success. No matter what comes your way, you're ready for it. And that's what I want for you, and I want to help you with that. So go to chrisnaugle.com and sign up for the Wealth webinar. We do them every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and you need to be there because it's time.
For over 90 years, we've been crash testing our cars in the tireless pursuit of automotive safety. At Volvo, safety's been first since 1927. We've saved millions of lives with the invention of the three-point seatbelt in 1959. At Volvo, we've made driving safer for you and them. Visit safety.findlayvolvo.com to learn more.
So they say if you give a man a gun, he'll rob a bank. But if you give a man a bank, he'll rob everybody. The good news for you is Private Money Club runs solely on peer-to-peer relationships, which means no banks allowed. So finally, there's a community for real estate entrepreneurs where it is truly a win-win solution. This community is a place where you can connect with other lenders and other borrowers, and the end result's massive growth for you. You get to build your real estate empire, and you get to do it solving other people's problems. So if that sounds like a place you want to be, well then join us. Go to privatemoneyclub.com/Kelly. And if you want $500 off, just add the code Kelly500 and I'll knock $500 off the premier membership. We'll see you on the inside.
Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. And my attitude is going to be big today because we got a Bills fan on the show, Mr. Ethan Bull. This man, he is a co-founder. He doesn't like to be called president, but I'm going to call him president so he seems even more important today, of ProAssisting. We got on the phone it's been about a month and a half ago. And I connected with this man like right away because his heart pours through the phone, and now being able to see him on video, it's so incredible. I am giving him a pass because he is a Bills fan. Kevin Dyson, I love you. That's my buddy, and he was on the show recently, and we know who the real champ is. It's right there in the background. That's the Oilers, baby, and the Titans. But when I connected with Ethan, it was so incredible because, again, his heart comes through everything. And not only his heart, but his heart in action. He created a company in ProAssisting that he wanted to make sure that everything was ethical and that he took his people into account before himself and his wife when they were doing things. So it wasn't about, hey, I need to have the largest profit margin and then take advantage of other people. He wanted to make a difference in the industry that he was doing. But now what's amazing is he doesn't have to worry about the profit margin because people want to be a part of what he's doing because he's doing the right thing for the right reasons. And guess what? The right thing is happening now. So I want to thank this young man for being on the show. I want to ask him if he'll convert to becoming a Titans fan and an Oilers fan, and we could do that today. We could baptize him into the club. But please, please welcome to the show, co-founder, president of ProAssisting, Mr. Ethan Bull.
Thanks a lot, Kelly. Thanks for having me. I will not convert. I lived through all 4 of those Super Bowls, and we're going to get it this year. And we're going to get it this year, and it's going to be a great day. So other than that, we can table that one. But thank you a lot for that. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Well, Ethan, I think it's such an amazing thing because you generally don't find this. And we were just watching the story last night, my wife and I, of the submarine that just went down. And you're seeing this all over the news in the submarine. And it was amazing because the submarine was built with some shoddy stuff. They're making videos about it. They showed the controller, and it was like my son's PlayStation. And I'm not making light of a tragedy that's happening, but this was obviously done with a faulty construction, faulty foundation, and it wasn't taken into account the the safety of the people, it looked like it was more about trying to bring something to market that wasn't ready. And the reason why I say this is because for you, with your company, you researched, you looked, and you found the challenge, and then you're solving the challenge, but you wanted to make sure that there was a firm foundation. Can you talk about that with ProAssisting?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a tragic situation. There's no getting around it. But the things that I've read about that in the last couple of days, um, it was known. I mean, people knew not to go in it, and it was rated, I think, for like 1,200 feet deep, and the wreck is like 4,800 feet deep, and I don't know. It's just a tragic situation. So moving that aside, and talking about pro assisting, I mean,
But
the thing was,
Ethan, when I'm saying about it, as far as the correlation with it, it's most of the time people look at the end result, right? So they look and say, I want to build a company that does this, that profits this, and they don't put the foundation. So what I've learned is that you have to dig as deep as you want to go high, right? If not, then it'll fall. And you have created a company that you and your wife worked on the foundation so strong that there's no way that it can succeed.
I listen. I hope you're right. We're in our 6th year, so most businesses don't get beyond the 5th. So we take great pride in that. And the thing is that our foundation is built on a combined 30 years of executive assisting experience between both Stephanie and I in the C-suites of billion-dollar companies. And when we moved out of New York City and looked around at some of these virtual assistant companies in the US that were promising virtual executive assistants, and then we saw what they were paying their assistants, and then we saw what they were charging their clients, and it just didn't align. It didn't align. We saw a gap, and that's where our business model differs. And we're not right for everyone, but when it works, we have clients who are with us longer than 5 years. And but it really all goes back to being a member of the community of executive assistants and knowing that it's a big job when you're sitting working for a high net worth individual who is very demanding, and you're touching every aspect of their life, business, personal, community. You have to be on your toes, and there is huge value in that. And we just did not see the flow of value in the virtual assistant firms that we saw out there in 2016, 2017, and 2018. And we saw a gap, and that's where we placed Pro Assisting.
So permission to try is probably one of the biggest things that stops people on an entrepreneurial journey, or even just going after their dreams. So who gave you the permission to try this? Because going from being an executive in the executive assistant world, right, and being with your wife in those things, there's some safety in that. And then when you jump, right, who gave you permission to try?
I think it was a number of factors. I think going back to 2015, it was our family. We had our second son. Our second son was 3 months old. We quit our jobs, ditched our healthcare, sold our condo in New York City, and moved to upstate New York, where we are right now, right outside of Rochester. And so the first one I would say was family. You know, we wanted a better life than what we could provide in New York City for our 2 growing kids. You know, we were looking at the school situation and how that worked, and then us having to keep our big time jobs to pay for the mortgage for the condo. And we just wanted to shake things up. So I think that was the first step. And then the second step was Stephanie at home with the kids. I was fortunate enough to get a really high level executive assisting job in Rochester, New York, and there's like 5 of them. And so I was very grateful for that. it provided time for Stephanie to stay home with the kids, but she was going a little crazy. And her friend called her up and said, hey, a client of mine is a Fortune 100 consultant. She needs great support who can interact with Fortune 100 companies. She doesn't need full time and she doesn't care where you are. And that night, Stephanie and I are searching on the internet, how much do we charge for an executive assistant per hour? And, the range was crazy. And we settled on an amount, and she had a conversation with the potential client, and the client didn't bat an eyelash and said, okay, let's go. And that kind of started us on the research deep dive of the VA space in the US. And that's where we started to see some of these things where, a company's charging $45, $50 an hour for service, and they're paying their assistant $18 an hour or $20 or $22 an hour. And they're advertising it as virtual executive assistants. And that didn't speak to us. I mean, and that's kind of where our secret sauce is that we don't charge by the hour, and we're able to partner with executive assistants who could command six figures in major metropolitan areas based on their experience, because we pass them 80% of our retainers, and they're making $90,000 a year, living where they want to live, working for who they want to work for, and building their own little business under our umbrella.
Why was that so important to you?
We're members of the community. We are career executive assistants. We really felt that when someone working with a virtual assistant company goes to a cocktail party and they say, I got this great, she's great, I got this great assistant. And they're like, well, how much are you paying? And they'll be like, oh, $45, $50 an hour. Not even taking that next step to realize that their assistant actually is only making $20 an hour. And 3 months down the road, they're going to demand more and more and more. And the assistant's going to get burnt out and just be like, I'm out, I'm done. Yeah. And so it devalued the role of the assistant in the eyes of the assistant. And it kind of obscured what the client's getting and, for what they're paying. And we're very transparent about that on our website. And it's a value that we lead with, because we want to work with great people. And when it works, our clients stick around, and so do our assistants. And that's, I think, our magic touch, if you will.
So most people look at Ethan now at working with Fortune 100 companies, being at the top end in that industry, and then jumping off and doing your own company. What was the first job that you had in your life that has helped you to be able to utilize some of those principles in what you're doing now?
Working as a busboy in my dad's restaurant. And, talking through what it meant to provide hospitality in the restaurant at such an early age. I started bussing tables at 9 years old, and I wasn't being paid. It was just, we'd get a call on a Sunday afternoon, getting ready to sit down, do a family dinner, and it'd be like, we don't have a waitress and we lost a bus person for the night. So we'd just get up from the table, go into the restaurant, and just start working. And really that talking about that sense of hospitality that goes hand in hand with running a restaurant, was really my first job experience.
Take us through into the second one, because I was just talking with my friend, big shout out to David Hamilton. This guy is an absolute beast, and he has done amazing things in his entrepreneurial journey, but he was like, you know what? I wish that people would ask me about the early days. And he told me about this story. He walked by a lawn, and it was overgrown, and he could just see the handle of something. And he walked over, looked at the handle, and it was a push mower, and just the handle was sticking out. He went to the guy and said, hey, can I, if I mow your lawn, can I use this push mower to make some money on some other lawns? And the guy was like, okay. So as he's mowing it, he finds an old school edger that you have to whack back and, the little weed whacker back and forth. And he
Yep.
says, excuse me, sir, can I use this also to, service other people, but I'll make sure that yours is taken care of. He does that. As he's doing it, this older guy down the street sees that he's working hard and then invites him over to his house and sharpens all his tools that are the other guys that he's borrowing, and he starts his first business. But most people see David now, this juggernaut, but they don't understand that was the foundation. What is the second job that Ethan Bull had? So you start off as that busboy, you're understanding hospitality, how to connect with people. You're doing it for free. What's the second one?
Well, it was a progression of jobs at the restaurant. The first paying job I got at the restaurant was actually a demotion to being a dishwasher. And then I moved up to busboy again, and actually a paying busboy. And then in the summers in college, I waited tables and I was bartending at the same restaurant. I was also worked the ice cream stand that was next door. And yeah, those were my first jobs, but I was exposed to entrepreneurship at a really early age. My dad owned the restaurant, but he had also owned a bowling alley, a construction company, a bar. He was a real estate broker. He owns trailer parks. And then my stepfather was an attorney who ran his own practice, and understanding that was its own business where he had to pay for his employees and the insurance and all of that. I actually took a crack at starting my first business when I was a junior in high school. And so that has always been, entrepreneurship has always been a driving force in me, throughout my whole career. So, I mean, we can talk about a little bit about that first business. We can talk about why I went to a specialty business school in Boston. We can talk about working in the entertainment industry in New York City. And frankly, I look at the entertainment world, being a screenwriter or an actor or a director or a producer, as kind of the ultimate entrepreneur, because you are trying to get money and people behind an idea that you really don't know it's going to work until people tell you it works, in a way that puts their butts in seats and their eyes on the screen. So, yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship has definitely been a thread throughout my whole career. And I used the executive assistant position in the beginning of my career as that 9-to-5 foundation that allowed me to chase these dreams outside of the office. And then what happens is you wake up, 10 years later and you're like, oh my God, I have a career here. I'm actually a career executive assistant. And, in the beginning, I felt ashamed of that in a way. Being a male executive assistant, there's like 2% male executive assistants in the workforce. And so it's actually something I had to come to terms with too. So there's a lot of different threads we could pull, depending on where you want to go.
So Ethan, how is it? I mean, when I talked about it earlier, but when I got on the phone with you, and even when we got on the video, like, I feel like you and I have been friends for a long time. And I told you before, and I tell my buddies and people who are important to me, I say, I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life, right? So right. You can't get away. But you have this vibe about you. Like, and what I found is that the difference between a person buying a product, a service, or coming back to an environment is simply the vibe. That's it. Like, you could have the greatest price in the world, the greatest product. You can have the greatest offering. But if the vibe sucks, you don't want to be around. And I said it to my friend the other day. I said, look, if you go to a party, they have the best band. They have the best food. They have the best pool. It's like in the Hollywood Hills. But you walk in and the vibe is off. You don't even want to be at that party. Then you go to the party at the broken down house with no view, little, kiddie pool in the back. You had to bring your own drinks. They're playing music off a little speaker off their iPhone. But the vibe is right. That's the party you talk about. How do you construct this type of vibe? Because it seems like that's been the thing that's opened the doors for you, not only in the executive assistant realm, but also in your business.
I was fortunate enough in college to have such a strong group of tight knit friends where um, we really cared about each other and we really checked in on each other. Like, how you doing today? And something seems off. What's going on? Talk to me. um, Not being afraid to have deep conversations at a time in our lives when most guys are supposed to be really macho and not show their feelings and not open up. And that transitioned in college to a group of us meeting a mentor who was our sociology professor. And we really kind of went deep on emotional intelligence, energy, interpersonal skills, connecting with people. And I've always had a strong interest in that. I love um, talking with someone and feeling open enough to where I can ask some pretty deep questions pretty quickly and get to a really interesting spot in that connection in a very short period of time. I credit my stepfather with instilling the art of question asking in me. And I really I like to learn and I love getting to know people on a deeper level where there is that connection. Um, I don't know if that's kind of the answer you were looking for, but I think it transcends all parts of life, whether it's business or family or community or, your friends. And those connections formed during those college years and being vulnerable with each other just reinforced it in a way that is still awesome today. I did lose my best friend from college to melanoma in 1999, and he was one of the foundational people in that group that we all remember and talk about whenever we're together. Um, and that I just think it was unique. It was unique, and yeah, it's something I carry with me, and I love getting to know people. Um, on the other hand, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I'm not afraid to put myself out there and ask the uncomfortable question, or make an uncomfortable statement, or sometimes you tell a joke that just does not hit. But sometimes in business too, you got to put yourself out there. And if you're consistent to your values and who you are, um, you shouldn't be afraid. And hoping for good things to come. Yeah.
So, Ethan, what do you think, like with high level executives that you work with, and when you were talking about it, your job, you were one of five in Manhattan at the time, like one of five. Like I want to let that
No,
sit.
I actually was meaning Rochester, New York, because it's such a
Rochester.
small market
Okay.
that one of five seats in Rochester that was commensurate with our experience, the six-figure compensation, the responsibility. Rochester is a town of about 600,000 people.
Mhm.
And we quickly realized that our experience that there was limited opportunity
Yeah.
in a smaller market.
Well,
So.
when you look at those kind of things and you look at these executives, what are some of the blind spots that you see from your perspective that a lot of times they're not? Because sometimes people don't know what they don't know. And I mean, high level executives, obviously very, very bright individuals. They wouldn't, if not, they wouldn't be in those spots. But when you're talking about from an executive, assistant realm, what are a lot of them missing?
Well, I think initially, and we run into this quite a bit with ProAssisting. When you have a successful C-suite executive and or type A entrepreneur, um, 9 times out of 10 they're micromanagers, and you have to get over that hump of one, trusting who you're partnering with to help you get more time back in your day. That's the name of the game. And two, understand that you're going to have to spend some of that time initially to train someone around how you want things done and what they can take off your plate. And we run into the quote unquote, I can do it faster myself philosophy. And that that hinders a lot because they're not thinking along the lines of, hey, if I train my assistant to do this once and I'm never going to have to do this again, it's going to save me X amount of time week in and week out for the next years to come. And seeing that that is going to go into my Bible for my office, my standard operating procedure for my office. So when I change assistants or this assistant moves on and a new one comes in, it's still going to be a part of the seat of the role. And I'm still going to get the benefit of compounding time by leveraging that support. That's a big one. And sometimes in more corporate America, um, executives shy away from their assistants doing personal work. And frankly, we feel it's one and the same.
Mm.
And because the more we can take things off plates, keep things from getting onto a principal's plate, give them more time back, whether it's getting your kids' baseball games into your schedule so you don't miss them and they're not scheduled over, or researching a family trip when your kids are on spring break, that's part of the overall role. And some companies and some executives shy away from that because they feel like there's lanes around that and what that is. So,
How does a person
yeah.
know, like with these executives, how do they know when they're ready for that type of thing? Because there's so many, and I see it with CEOs, I see it with founders so often. And I ran into this in my own company where, again, I could do it faster, or I had an idea and I thought the idea was a system. But then I realized it's not a system until it's written down. And it's not an efficient system until I can hand that system to a 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old can accomplish it at the level, if not better than what I could. And once we adopted that type of thought process, it really took the brakes off. So how does a person know when they're ready?
When the pain gets so much that you just have to make a change.
But I mean, if we're waiting for the pain, Ethan, like, help me with this theory, right? So I have people, founders and CEOs all the time talk about like, I heard one, and he was, I love when people are just like mad about it. They're like, oh, I'm just busy. I'm just busy. And then he was like, I'm just busy. I just wake up in the morning, and he almost a badge of honor. He was like, I'm putting out fires all day. And he was like beating his chest, I'm putting out fires. And I said to him, why don't you just wet the soil? So should we wait for pain, or should we look ahead like you have and say, there's going to be pain down the road. So to circumvent that pain, let me put something in play before I ever have a challenge. Just like not going to the grocery store when you're hungry. You should go to the grocery store when you ain't hungry. Does that make sense?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, the Harvard Business Review says your first hire should be an executive assistant. I preach it to the choir all the time, but I'm just saying that what we see when we're talking to prospects is if the pain isn't high enough and you're looking at the cost and you're looking at your balance sheet for the month and your cash flow for the month, there's a breaking point. And I actually do think that in the beginning, entrepreneurs should know how to do everything in their business so they're not held hostage from anyone. And then you say, okay, I'm bringing out an assistant and they're going to handle my scheduling, because usually that's a big one. All the back and forth that happens and trying to get people aligned with location and agendas and information and all of that. But, your assistant then will help you find that social media person who's going to handle your social media, and will figure out that, bookkeeping software that your bookkeeper is going to use, and slowly build out from there. But it's when should you do it? I think it's funny because you talk to a first-time entrepreneur and they're like, I'm going to wait, to where a second or third entrepreneur is going to be like, I'm going to go early, and I know that I'm going to be spending money and not utilizing to the absolute fullest, but I'm preparing for the future now. You can go either way. It's obviously.
But from
The
Ethan,
latter
from Ethan Bull's standpoint, if we're not thinking about audience and we're not thinking about like the politically correct thing to say, and like I've said in the past on the podcast, and Gino, you've heard me before. Shout out to Gino and Tiffany; they're getting married soon. And shout out to Wayne and AC too. But you've heard me say it before, where my pops was like, let's run without the mufflers, son. And I was like, at first I was like, what do you mean, Pop? And he was like, let's run without the mufflers. Nobody's going to hear it. Nobody's going to judge it. From Ethan Bull's standpoint, nobody in the room, just me and you, because I won't tell anyone, I promise. Should a entrepreneur hire on immediately, or should they wait until the pain?
Oh, immediately. I mean, and the thing is that, we were talking about virtual assistants earlier, and then there's overseas assistant support. And there are all these different flavors and options, which is fantastic. So you can tailor your current needs with the support options that are out there. So you're matching. And then, so like, let's say you're just starting your business and you land that big client and you need to set up the systems and everything. And you know what? You want to pay $5 an hour and get an assistant that's overseas. You're training yourself to use that person. Are you going to outgrow that person? Yeah, you hope so. And then you hope to move up. And then to a US based virtual assistant where you're paying $50 an hour and you're doing, 20 hours a month with them. And then you're saying, okay, I want more 9 to 5 support, someone that I can just pick up the phone and call randomly and they're going to answer. And then you may look at ProAssisting. And then we help companies form a bridge from working with us to then going off and hiring a new assistant full time in the office. And so there's shades, and it goes from the $5 an hour overseas all the way up to $150,000, $200,000 salaried virtual personal executive or personal assistant, estate manager, all the way up. And it's about knowing the season that you're in and matching the support to that. And what that does is it trains you as the entrepreneur to work on the business instead of in the business. And by delegating, by being very direct, by being particular, and building those systems immediately, that's going to give you that foundation. And then it'll be very, very easy for you to move up those stages as your business grows.
So let's talk about that entrepreneurial journey too for you, because this when you said that most businesses don't last 5 years, you lasted 6. Congratulations on that. It's amazing, right? And to be able to get through those kind of things. But before we started recording too, you said something, and you were like, I said, how are things going? And you were like, I'm waiting for the flywheel. And being an entrepreneur for over 30 years, I responded to you. You said, I'm waiting for the victory, loss. And then I was like, actually, it's probably going to be the opposite side. And when I said loss, I want to take that word and I just want to say lesson. So I just think of it as, my brother taught me, you either win or you learn. And so I think of it as learn, win, yay. Don't get ego, go back into it, learn. let's talk about that journey, and especially when you're doing it, when you're starting off on that journey with your wife. Now looking back 6 years in, you're seasoned, things are going well, you got an amazing company. You and I are in the room like right now. A young kid walks in with his wife and says, Kelly and Ethan, I got this really cool idea. I'm going to quit my job and start my first company. What's the 3 things that you say to that kid right away?
3 things. Hold on a second.
Okay, all right.
How's your relationship? And do you have 9 months of living expenses saved in an emergency fund?
Go back to number 1 and tell me more.
I think you should be really strategic about when you quit that job and start that business. And I think there is a transition that happens there that, if done properly, reduces the stress and allows you to make that transition in a much more smooth way. And we've done that with ourselves, but we've also done it with over 80 assistants that we've brought through and into and through ProAssisting to transition them from working for bosses as a W-2 employee to working for themselves as an independent contractor serving clients instead of bosses. And there's a lot of prep work that can happen, and planning and patience and understanding the right time to pull that trigger. Now, sometimes you're pushed. I was pushed. I was let go from my role in Rochester after 2 years, and Stephanie had that client, and we were pushed, and the following day after getting let go, we started talking to ad agencies about pivoting our business to what you see today. But for someone who is looking to, well, in this particular example, I would also want to know, is this idea you have related to you, your career and your career expertise, or is it something completely different than what you've been doing to earn money over the last 5 or 10 years? And, those questions bring up a lot of more questions and plans and kind of a better way of thinking about, let's start this business. And Stephanie and I are actually a very common story in that we took our career expertise and transitioned it into a service that we quote unquote productized with our business model. That sounds like a lot of jargon, but going back to the guy who was cutting the lawn, he cuts the lawn, he does another one, he does another one, he gets referrals, and before you know it, you're starting your own business. I don't know if you know Nick Huber, but he has a podcast called The Sweaty Startup, and he scoffs at the Silicon Valley, come up with an app idea and go raise a ton of money, and that's how you're an entrepreneur. He's like, no, the real entrepreneurs is the painter who paints interior and exterior in your town, leverages technology to provide amazing customer service, outdoes every other painter in the 30-mile radius, and then goes up and opens a shop 60 miles away after the first one is successful. He's like, that's where he sees real wealth being generated. And artificial intelligence is not going to come away and take our painters and our plumbers and our electricians and our tradespeople. And you can start to look at, even being a chief marketing officer. Well, there's a startup down the road that needs a fractional chief marketing officer. You can productize your experience as a chief marketing officer and present yourself as a fractional chief marketing officer to the client down the street. And then you get 5 more and you're making twice the amount of money you were making before. You have diversity of clients. And the internet is, one, democratizing geography, and two, making all of this possible. And throw in a little thing called the pandemic, where business owners, entrepreneurs are realizing that the easier way to start a company is through freelancers and independent contractors as opposed to hiring employees. And if you get to that point where you hire employees, awesome, fantastic, but you don't have to start there. So yeah, I mean, but I'm interested. What kind of business is this guy starting?
Well, I want to give a huge shout out to Sharon Jackson. Sharon Jackson is watching right now, and she was just talking about she loves your information. She loves you, Ethan, and she is so excited that you're sharing what you're sharing. Let's talk about this fractional part, because for me, I wish that when I first started my first company, I wish I would have known about the fractional side. Because for me, at the time when we did, it was just the employee. So I just brought on the employee, and then I actually trained them in that. So I took young kids, and then if we needed social media, I was just like, look, on your off time when we're not that busy, which we weren't when we first started off, then I need you researching. And then I created these things, which was awesome, but I didn't understand the fractional part. And then I was with my buddy, Troy Hoffman, and you guys should meet. I'll introduce you. But Troy Hoffman was like, look, we have fractional C-suite people. And I was like, well, wait a second. Talk to us about this concept of fractional, because this really is a game changer in business today.
You know, I mean, hey, our company provides fractional remote executive assistance to entrepreneurs and business owners. There are fractional C-suite executives. I think the roles that kind of really broke through initially, at least from my perspective, was IT. Hiring an outside service provider to handle your IT needs, because frankly, you need to be a certain size company before you hire an IT rep or person for your company. And there's that gap.
Ethan, help me with this though. Break this down as if you were talking to my son who's 11 years old, and you needed to help him to understand, because a lot of times, and this is what I've seen happen in industries create vernacular and vocabulary that's complicated and only is understood by the people in the industry, that makes them seem more important than they are. And I learned this I was at a bar, and I was listening to this guy talk, and he was talking about the arbitrage. Chris Nagle, you know exactly who you are. And he kept talking about the arbitrage. I was like, man, this guy is so smart. He's so intelligent.
He got it from Vaynerchuk.
And he was like, the arbitrage. You got to know the arbitrage. I was like, damn, I don't know the arbitrage. So I was like feeling bad about myself. And then I did what I do all the time. I enrolled myself in the highest level of education that you can, which is called Google. And I Googled arbitrage, and it was just the difference between two numbers. And I was like, wait a second. Then when I understood the vocabulary and vernacular, it became simple to me, and I could actually play in that arena. So now all my financial friends, when I sit down with them, first word I use are arbitrage. They're like, damn, he knows what he's talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know the difference between two numbers. Help us with this fractional side, because some people don't even understand the concept. So if Maddox, my son, 11 years old, sitting here, and you needed to explain to him what fractional CEO or C-suite or fractional in your business and how it can help a business, break it down for him.
Yeah, so I have a 12-year-old Wyatt, so I can talk that language, and Wyatt is really good at math and understands that. You say to yourself, look, let's say you're running a business and it's doing well. and you a business broker comes to you and says, I want to sell your business. I can sell it. It's like, but you know, you need a CFO because you need a chief financial officer to put all your numbers in place and whatnot. And then we're going to sell your business for a lot of money. So let's just start with that as being the story. And then you can say, okay, well, for me to hire a CFO for this company for a year, which is probably what it takes to get a company ready to sell, is going to cost me probably $150,000 to $200,000 in salary. I also have to pay taxes on that. And there's more expenses, but for an 11-year-old, think $150,000. And then say to yourself, but you could hire a fractional CFO, which just means working part-time, and someone who has done this before, and they're going to charge you $4,000 a month, which is $48,000 for the year, as opposed to $150,000. And on the $48,000, you're not going to have to pay the taxes and extra fees and everything. It's just a straight 48, as opposed to 150 that turns into probably 200 with benefits and all of that. But the difference between the two numbers, arbitrage, is you're going for that. You're getting the same output from both, but you only really need that scalpel or that very sharp knife, very delicate cut of a fractional CFO, and you don't need that sledgehammer of a full-time CFO coming in and really going at your business. I don't know. How'd I do?
You did amazing. You did incredible. Let's go into number 2 that you were talking about, because when we brought this kid in, this hypothetical kid, but it ain't hypothetical to the people out there listening, because there are kids out there that are like, wow, entrepreneurship is so shiny, right? It's so shiny. And I had one kid come to me, and he's a good buddy of mine. He was like, man, I want to be an entrepreneur. I said, why? He said, because I don't want someone telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want more time with my family, and I don't want to miss any baseball games. I was like, bro, I mean, let's check this at the door for a second, because entrepreneur, I mean, it's not the shiny side. But you said, how is your relationship with your wife? Why was that number 2? Can you expand on that and help us to understand why you would ask that kid that question?
Well, mine and Stephanie's communication has been so important to our success throughout our whole relationship. When I was an executive assistant, she was making 3 to 4 times the amount of money I was making. And as a man, that kind of opened up a lot of feelings. Mm-hmm. And we had to have very open and honest, heart to heart, sometimes difficult conversations around being on the same page, her acknowledging my worth, even though she makes 4 times the amount of money, my acknowledging her stress, because a lot of that money was based on bonus, and she was the reason that we were able to get our mortgage for our very expensive condo. And when the economy tanked, she was feeling stress on that, all of that. And to be a successful entrepreneur, I really feel, and we've, in our minds, proven this by working with all the assistants that we've brought into ProAssisting, that you have to have a strong personal life, and you have to have a really good handle on your personal finances. What's your monthly nut? How much do you have in savings? Where could you get more money if your business doesn't take off like you think it's going to? What is the easiest path for the least amount of money to having cash flow positive business? And having your personal finances in order allows you to kind of see into the future a little bit, and allows you to be able to take that leap of potentially quitting your job. But what it also does is, when those numbers aren't lining up, it allows you to plan, saying, hey, I got a good job. I can still stick this job out for 8 months. And by the end of that 8 months, I'm going to have all of my bad debt paid for. I'm going to have so much in a emergency fund that we will be able to survive when we quit this job. And I'm going to be able to do some of the foundational work on the business on nights and weekends that is going to give me a huge leg up and a shot forward, as opposed to just saying, all right, I quit. Now I'm an entrepreneur. The I think, the social media, the entrepreneurship has become so cool that you think it happens so quickly, and patience is the name of the game. And that's why my first one was, hold on a second.
What's been the biggest kick in the head since being an entrepreneur? Because my brother has taught me this so often, and is that people learn from successes, but most of the time people don't really care. Like if you shout out all the things that you did and all, you beat your chest. This was my valor. This is what I did. I don't even know if that was the right word, a term to use at the time, but I used it. And we beat our chest, but nobody cares. And then, you lose. There was one point where I made a decision in our company, and in 6 weeks I lost $1.2 million. And so when that happened, it was nuts, because when I told that story, everyone was like, oh, tell me more. You inspire me. I was like, that's not inspiring. That's a lot of money I lost. And I got kicked in the head and had people saying bad stuff and all these things. And it was hard and it was rough on my family. What's been the biggest kick in the head since you started this business?
It's funny, when you were talking about that, I was thinking of one of the biggest smart decisions we made. But I would also say, in terms of biggest kick in the head, and 6 years in, I'm just personally starting to get a handle on it, is that I didn't realize, even when the business, everything's going great, that there is still just an inherent amount of stress that just resides in you. And I'm finally just getting comfortable with that. And I really did not see that when I was a W-2 employee working for someone. The grass really looked a lot greener on the other side. And then when we launched our business, started getting traction, it's always like, oh, we want that $20,000 a month. We want that $30,000 a month, and what I would give to have a $50,000 a month. And then you get there and you're like, why am I still stressed? What's going on here? So that's been a huge thing for us. And I don't know if I guess it's been a kick in the head. It just,
where's been the misstep? In 6 years you had to make a misstep. What's a specific misstep? And the reason why I say, and I'm going to share one with you. I had a young lady. I made a decision very early on in our company. Hey, in the event that you don't want to work for our company, then I don't want you here, and I'm not going to try and convince you to do it. But I made a decision at an event to ask the question, do you really want to be here? Which I could have waited. But by doing that, I actually let the girl go right then. It embarrassed her, and she took 4 or 5 of her friends with her. And again, within about 6 weeks, I lost about $1.2 million. For me, I probably could have done it a little bit different. I could have been a little bit more gracious, but I didn't. My ego got involved, and for that, I got a $1.2 million education. What is a specific, Ethan, that you did that you were like, that was a bonehead decision?
I think it's happened a few times. It's pushing a sale through, even when you know it's most likely not going to work out and it's not going to be the right fit. And the problem is, when you're starting out, you really need to take all comers to get that momentum and that cash flow. And you need to then, hopefully sooner rather than later, understand that, okay, I really can't bring on clients that aren't the right fit for us because they're just going to be headaches down the road. And being able to have those difficult conversations with people who want to work with you, but saying you're just not the right fit. You really need a full-time person, because if you come to us with everything that you just told me you need our assistant to do, I'm going to be calling you up in 4 weeks saying, we got to go to full resource, and that's $9,000 a month. That's not good for you or your business. You're better off going out and finding someone full-time who's in their mid-20s, has, you know, maybe if you're a design firm, maybe is coming out of design school, where you can pay them 52, 55,000 a year and take that risk because you have all this work, but we're just not the right fit there. And as a business owner, you want to take, and you want to see that monthly revenue go up and up and up, not realizing that more headaches are going to come, and it's going to, by taking those clients that aren't really the right fit.
Well, it brings to mind Jim DiGiulio. He's the one of the owners and the general manager of FINDLAY VOLVO Cars of Las Vegas. And what he taught me was that transactions versus relationships. And he was like, I always go for the relationship because the transaction will happen 1, 2, or 3 times, but the relationship will last a lifetime. Can you talk to the importance of relationships in your business? Because this is a foundation. Like when you and I first talked, this was a thing that you spoke about. And this was a thing that I could hear in your voice that it came from your heart. It didn't just come from, lip service. So can you talk to the importance of relationships in the context of what it is that you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of free consultation calls with prospects who are interested in potentially us, or just learning more about the current state of assistant support and where we're at. And I had one just the other day, and he was going through everything, and I'm much better at again, only taking clients that I know we are aligned with, that it could be a long-term relationship. And I have all this knowledge around organizational management, thinking about roles and who does what and how that works. And he was going through all of this, and he got to the end and I said, frankly, this is a 2-person job. And it's because of X, Y, and Z. And you're looking for cross discipline where you're going to get mediocre on both sides as opposed to expert on both sides if you break this up into 2 different roles. And he sent me a note after the call. He said, that was you totally changed my whole perspective. We're not ready for you guys yet, but I can't wait to tell people about you. And when we are ready, we're going to come back. Another example, I was talking with 2 doctors, husband and wife team, 2 doctors, husband and wife, starting their own kind of practice outside of working at a teaching hospital. And they were going through this role of, we really think this could be great and whatnot. And they're like, and then we got to the point in the conversation where I said, and we have a daily huddle at 7:30 in the morning. And I was like, excuse me? And they said, yeah, we have a daily huddle at 7:30 in the morning. It goes for half an hour, 45 minutes. We want the assistant to be sitting in on that, so then they can go and do all the things throughout the day and do all that. I'm like, I can't ask an assistant to be up in the morning at 7:30 in the morning every day, 5 days a week on a fractional executive assistant role. I'm like, you know what you need? You need and I have a background in healthcare as well. I'm like, you need a recent graduate who has their master's in public health, who is looking to join a company like yours because you're looking to grow it. They want upside potential with equity, opportunity, and bonus. You could get them for probably $70,000 a year. And in the Pittsburgh area where you guys are located, you should look at X, Y, and Z schools and talk to their alumni departments and whatnot. And the gentleman, the husband, I could hear it through the phone. His mind was totally blown. He's like, how much do I owe you for this call? I want to pay you for this call. I was like, get out of here. This was a free call. You guys scheduled this with me. I am telling you this because it's I see it. I just see it. And they by the end of the call, they were saying, if you or your family have any back problems, you come to us and we will take care of you for free. And we're going to remember this conversation. And you know what? I may never hear from them again or whatnot, but that's karma. You want to put that out. And I'm here to help. And that's the nature of what we do. And so I would much rather not close a client, but make sure and know that I got them the support they needed. So they remember back to that conversation every time they look at that person that we told them to go get. And then they come across someone in their network and they'll say, I got the perfect guy for you to talk to. You got to go talk to Ethan at ProAssisting. Because whether you're right for them or not, he'll tell you what you need. And if you are right, I'm sure he'll knock it out of the park. So,
Ethan, it's unbelievable. It's evangelical marketing. I mean, you're creating evangelists that don't even, some of them maybe won't even use your product, but they're going to talk about it. Who taught you that? Who taught you that? Because that's not normal. Because most of the time, I have a guy. If you're out there listening, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And I have a guy that when I text him and say, yo, how you doing, man? He's like, let me know when you're ready to do business, and then just doesn't text me back. And from my standpoint, I'm saying, like, how are you doing, man? Because there might be a time in the future where we do business, but if in the event that you don't want to have any type of connection at all, most likely when that thing comes, I don't know that I'll be talking about you. But then there's the other side, that there's the guy that says, hey, man, how are you? What's going on? And I'm not saying that we need to, sit down all the time, but who taught you this evangelical marketing where you could create people that are preaching the gospel of who Ethan is, that some of them don't even consume the product itself?
I don't know. I mean, well, number one, a tenet of our philosophy on being a modern assistant is to help, is to serve, is that's it. And I used to be a legacy assistant. I used to have really sharp elbows. I could be really gruff. I came up in entertainment where phones were thrown at me. I came up in advertising working for an executive who went through 13 assistants in 12 months. I won him over in a year. And then he pretty much gave me the keys to the kingdom. So I had that transition in my own career of realizing that I want to help. But, I think,
I mean, does it go back? Does it go back to your parents? Does it go back to, is Ethan born this way? Is there a gene that we can buy that we could put into people from Ethan? That could be the next marketing thing for you, Ethan. Because if you could bottle that gene, maybe it's a drink do you drink a certain drink and we could drink it and then we'll have that?
If that was true, I'd be a billionaire right now. No, it's a mindset. And the sense of hospitality is providing a service, but then raising it to the level of hospitality and how you make someone feel. A service is something you do to someone. Hospitality is how you make them feel. So, an amazing TED Talk, Bobby Stuckey, a sommelier restaurateur in Colorado. It's an 8-minute TED Talk, and it's called How to Be a Hospitalian. He did it in 2014, and it really crystallized a lot of the conversations that I had with my father and stepmother around the restaurant business, and a lot of conversations that I had with my stepfather and my mother around how to treat clients and what's doing the right thing. And then you combine it and come to today. And we mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. I mentioned him earlier. He's all about give, and then take or ask. Give, ask. Um, Alex Ramosi, fantastic guy to listen to. He's all about give, 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 give. And you know, and when the stars align and then you connect, um, hopefully that long-term relationship is formed. And that's the thing with our business, we're month to month. We don't lock anybody into a long-term agreement. So it only behooves us to provide value on a continual basis and make sure we're aligned on the expectations so that a long-term relationship can take place. And and so part of it is being able to point people in the right direction even when they're not right for us. And I'm not a hard sales guy. I'm an executive assistant. I'm not looking to force anybody into a sale or make a quick buck. I think recurring revenue is really kind of, I think, the lifeblood of a lot of service-based businesses if you can find the right business model to present that. And you're only going to get that if you're aligned on expectations and create the right environment for that to take place.
That it's funny that you say it, because when you and I talked the very first time, there was a couple things that stood out. One of the things was that you don't do contracts, that you go month to month. And it was incredible because, as my brother said yesterday on the phone, he said that takes some brass balls, right? It takes some supreme confidence in what it is that you're doing, because you have to perform every month. Why did you choose that way?
Well, again, it goes back to our experience of being career executive assistants and knowing that both the executive assistant and the boss or the client or the principal do not want to go through onboarding. And once you both commit to that onboarding and get through that process and get to the other side of the know, like, hopefully love and trust, that client is willing to put up with some mistakes. And that assistant is willing to put up with some, gruff behavior or whatnot, because deep down they know they're both good people and they know they're both adding value, and it becomes that codependent relationship. And I don't want to sit here and lock anybody into a long-term agreement, even though it hurts the value of our business in the eyes of a potential acquirer, because I want that transfer of value to be felt every single month. And it puts some pressure on our assistants to perform, and it puts some pressure on our clients to leverage. And if those two things are happening, and we don't charge by the hour. It's a flat rate retainer, and we don't talk hours with clients. And so we express that there is additional value in what we do than just $1 for hour service. And again, it goes back to finding that right fit. The assistant that meets our criteria of what we look for and understands the rules of the road, and the client who meets our criteria and understands the rules of the road. And if they're aligned, they have the potential to be together for years. And that's the goal.
When you're bringing on assistants, like we were talking about SOPs, standard operating procedures, that confused me too early on. That was a acronym that when people would talk about it, they would be the SOPs. And what do you mean? KPIs, key performance indicators. Right. Yep. And so those were, again, vernacular and vocabulary. And once you break them down, they become very simple. And what I would make sure that everyone out there listening is understand the vocabulary of and the language that is spoken in your industry, or the industry that you want to master, but then turn it into your language. Draw them to you, as opposed to you having to think that it has to be complicated. But when we look at this and we have KPIs in place and we have SOPs in place, like you do to be able to have any business, how do you, Ethan, you and your wife, how do you impart the heart and the soul and not just the technique in your assistants when they move on. Because we talked about it earlier, the magic sauce for you is, you said it, the difference between service and hospitality is the function that's done or the way that the person feels. We talked about it earlier that you have a vibe that people want to be a part of. How are you able to transfer that as opposed to just the technique and the system to the people that are working with you?
It's a two-step process. And so the first step is actually seeing the hard experience on their resume / LinkedIn profile, and actually seeing that they have been an executive assistant for more than 3 or 4 years in a high level for a C-suite executive. What does that background tell me? How they present that information, what does that tell me? So that's the bar in terms of getting a conversation. And then the conversation is all about the emotional intelligence, the work ethic, the unspoken, the really getting down and going deep on very specific stories from what I'm seeing off their resume, and how they express that, and getting that sense of work ethic, um, you know, having some self-awareness, um, hearing for things around hospitality. I love to see restaurant or bartending experience way down on the list, in terms of their career trajectory. Um, and digging in and seeing if they agree with our idea of being a modern assistant versus a legacy assistant. And if they are, and if they're showing us that, we give them a shot, and we'll partner them with a client. And um, the last step of the process is the agreement. And our agreement with our partner EAs has gotten so specific that once you're signing on the dotted line, what the expectations are. And the good thing about that is that we then get to stick up for and protect them when a problem client kind of slips through the cracks, or a client has unrealistic expectations and just yeses us to death to get signed on the dotted line and get rolling with an assistant. So I have those difficult conversations on both sides. Um, and I strive very hard to do it in an empathetic way, and in a way that honors both sides, the client and the assistant. But really, that emotional intelligence, the soft skills, um, tone of voice, and frankly, I do a lot of it just over the phone. And we do a Zoom call before we completely sign with someone. But there's got to be that connection over the phone, without seeing people, without and just straight up tone of voice. What am I feeling? What's my gut telling me? I hate that it's not scientific. We've thought about introducing some personality tests into what we're doing, but we're not there yet. We're very boutique. We want to work with cool people who get the role and want to rise to that level of modern assistant. Want to be of service. So it's just a very in-depth conversation, and something that I've learned from top recruiters at the big tech firms, and I think maybe even Elon Musk. I'm not a huge Elon Musk fan, but is that how specificity, when someone tells you a story, reveals honesty.
Mm.
And that's why I leverage my ability to ask those questions, dig deep, stay on a point for longer than what maybe someone else would, to get to that specificity. and then questioning, is this ringing true for me? And yeah, we've got the best assistant, the best remote assistants in the country, able to provide service for clients, hands down. You look at our assistants and their backgrounds, and you put them against any other company, and where those assistants are, and not denigrating them at all. It's just that we hold a very, very high standard to who we partner with.
Wow. So if you were to distill down, or you have children, you said, how many children you have? You said the one is 12. So you have two boys. You find out that you got 15 minutes left and Ethan is moving on. Your boys walk into the room, your wife is there. What's the 3 or 5 things that you say to them? And once you say them, you're done.
Oh man. Your word is your bond. Have patience. One thing we constantly tell our sons is, you have to, the trick in life is to fully meet all of your responsibilities while having as much fun as possible. And I would definitely reinforce that one. Take care of your mother. I'm getting choked up. Yeah. And I love you.
How important is it in the journey of building a business, building a legacy, taking care of your family, all this stuff? How important is it to love your wife at the highest level?
Oh, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, about making sure that your personal world is in order and on stable foundation, before taking the sometimes very risky leap into entrepreneurship or starting your own business. But I mean, Stephanie and I, we're so grateful. Our communication is through the roof. We got a date night coming up tonight, and I'm so excited. And just we're blessed. And I've been surprised in myself at how much my love for her has grown over the last 5 years, going through this, the transition of me losing my job and us saying we're going to plant a flag and we're going to see if it works, and making it to where we are now. It's we're really, really, really lucky. The business has forced us to fully communicate in an open and honest way. But as I said before, we were working on that stuff when she was making 4 times the amount of money I was making. And we were very conscious about that. And I honestly think that goes back to my days in college with a group of guys who were not afraid to share their feelings, who were not afraid to say when they're having a bad day, who were helping each other out and giving each other a hand, from the social aspect, the sociology aspect of true friendship. Scott Galloway talks about how the real true masculinity is an open hand to someone in need. And it's not pounding on the chest saying I'm the strongest guy in the room, or I'm the best and you're the worst, or I win and you lose. True masculinity is being able to stick up for the people who are less fortunate than you. And I am very grateful that both Stephanie and I fully commit to and believe in that. And we're trying to teach that to our sons. And, we're very fortunate. And this past year, Stephanie and I got the idea to have a Bulls Giving on the Friday after Thanksgiving. And we sat our boys down, at the time, 7 and 11, and we said, there's a lot of people less fortunate than us out there. And we are making a commitment to donate a certain percentage of our money that we make on this business to charities. And we want to give you each $500 to pick certain charities that you want to donate that money to. And we talked about the different options. One of them is called Able Gamers, which basically is a charity that gives special gaming equipment to handicapped kids so they can interact with and communicate online with other kids playing video games. Or they also wanted to give to our community organization that provides internet access to underprivileged families in the community, and really having that sense of that and having that sense of giving in a way that is strong and not a sense of weakness. And that's what raising two boys in today's day and age should be about. Yeah, and Scott Galloway just makes that point so brilliantly.
What do you wish your two boys knew about their dad?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I really feel it when I let someone down or I make a mistake or I say something I shouldn't have. I am very, on the one hand, that can bring some really fun times or some inspirational things. But on the other hand, it can be viewed in the wrong way. And so I guess I would hope that they know that I apologize too, and that apologizing is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. Um, so I think they know that because I apologize to my kids when I have raised my voice too much or blame them for something they didn't do, or, you know, being open and honest in that parents screw up too, you know. Nobody's perfect. Um, and and care, it's funny. Yesterday, raising kids nowadays is so hard. Um, we've got an 8-year-old, well, and he's the second, so we've got a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're on video games and they're in these communities with 20-year-olds. We don't know who these guys are, where they are, whatnot. And we know they swear, you know. Um, and I'm sitting here working and I hear in the other room, um, Henry, our 8-year-old, nonchalantly drops the F-bomb while he's on the Oculus, which Facebook is even thinking about lowering the age for the Oculus Quest to 13, and he's 8. But it's so hard. And so I brought him in the room. We brought Stephanie in, and we were like, look, we're trying to be more modern parents than what we had. Because if my mom heard me say that, I would be grounded for 2 weeks. Nothing. And we had the open, honest conversation of, look, I know kids are saying that. I know you're hearing Wyatt and his friend or Wyatt's friends talk like that. But if any adult heard you say that, it reflects on our whole family. And you don't do that. And it's inappropriate. And, afterwards, Stephanie and I talked, and I was like, were we hard enough on him? Was that? And we both came to the conclusion, like, we're just being straightforward, honest. He knows the rules. Is he going to break them? Probably. But we can still hold him to the standard. So Yeah, raising kids is tough nowadays, and wanting them to have a sense of community, and the pandemic, going through that at these ages was really tough. Um, but again, we're blessed, and meet your responsibilities, have as much fun as possible, keep it simple, you know.
Well, you talked about forgiveness and also to that true masculinity and asking for forgiveness. And I was wondering, like, have you asked for forgiveness for being a Bills fan? And if not, would you like to do that now?
Not in a million years.
Tell us the reason why you think irrationally that you are going to win the Super Bowl next year.
You know, Josh Allen got rid of his girlfriend. I think he's really focused in on football right now. I think Stefan Diggs knows how to really manipulate social media and really make a point. I think he's made the point. I think he's going to come back strong. I think Von Miller is going to have a Pro Bowl year. Um, I just I would be nervous if I was any other team in the league.
So with ProAssisting, how, like, who would not be a person? I mean, outside of, like, I mean, an Oilers fan. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to get over it. Because I would have to bring, like, if I sign on to ProAssisting, I got to bring you an Oilers jersey. I got to see it in the back. You were saying that you're going to put a Bills helmet up before we started the podcast. But who wouldn't be someone that would consume the product or service?
I like to say, if you're a solopreneur or a very small company, we really want to see revenue north of $600,000 a year to justify our minimum $3,000 per month retainer on an executive assistant. That is 1/3 the resources of an assistant dedicated to you Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, after hours and on weekends, in atypical situations, or if you're traveling. On the other end of that spectrum, if you're well north of that, and but yet your expectations are that you need someone looking at your calendar, able to pick up the phone at any moment, 9 to 5, you either need to pay us $9,000 a month for a full 3/3 executive assistant, or you need to hire someone full time. Other than that, we fall into that gap very nicely and allow for the flexibility to grow and contract should need be in that gap.
Ethan, you're incredible, man. I mean, I started the podcast. I did a post yesterday, and I said I started the podcast because of my two kids. And I showed my kids, and my daughter never wants to be on. I was just about to say film, but it's not film anymore. It's like a video.
No.
She doesn't want to be on the video. But I was like, here's my daughter in her native environment. She's just getting food out the fridge and not looking at me. Then my son is living his best life on the couch with the iPad and talking with his buddies, and talking about, like, I'm tired, Dad. What are you tired from? From voice messaging and playing some Roblox. And he's got pizza. He's got, like, Brookie's there. He's just living the life. But I started the podcast because of those two, Maddox and McKenna. Maddox is 11, marches the beat of his own drum. McKenna, 14 years old, actress, heart, sarcastic personality, incredible young lady. But I wanted to take iconic people like you, and I wanted to show my kids that there's no idols in life, that there's just icons like Ethan Bowles of the world, president, own it, and co-founder. But there's icons like Ethan Bull, not idols to worship, but icons to be inspired by. And I wanted to do this show because I wanted my kids to see that the Ethan Bulls of the world are not superheroes. They're human beings, blood running through their veins, with phenomenal attitudes, incredible integrity, and great work ethic. So what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names, it would be awesome.
Maddox, keep marching to that beat of your own drummer. that is where you're going to find gold. And it may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow or next year, but I have a sense that imagination is part of that beat, and it will talk to you. And so don't let growth and adulthood silence that. So listen to that. And for McKenna, I would say that acting and performing can be a very noble pursuit, but it can also be extremely difficult. So do it for the love of doing it and not for any external validation.
Ethan, you're better than advertised, man. It is honestly, it has been my absolute pleasure. I mean, we talked about, it's cool because there's going to be some things in the future that we talked about in our first conversation. And, but I admire you. I love to see that there's companies like yours with ProAssisting. I love to see that not only that there's companies like that, but that there's people behind those companies that have a heart like you and Stephanie do. And I want to commend you for it because, the long game that you've talked about this whole entire time. I can't wait for you to go back and listen because the long game I find I just find that that's the sustainable one. I could be completely wrong. Someone could be like, nah, you need to take the short path and I'll make, 100 times more and do all these things. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when I get, maybe when I go see sweet baby Jesus, he'll tell me like you did the wrong thing. You were too slow. But this type of business is what this world needs. We need more Ethan Bulls in this world that are willing to do the right thing for the right reason and know that the right thing is going to happen, even if it isn't on his time. And my hat's off to you. I want to give you a round of applause. You're a phenomenal human being.
No, I really appreciate that. We're always works in progress, continually trying it. We're not perfect, but we're trying to be. So I really, really, really appreciate it. It's been great.
Well, now's the time that everyone watching or listening, I forgot to say it at the beginning, but you need to smash the subscribe button. Don't even push it. I want you to smash it as hard as you possibly can. I want you to, because 85% of the people who pick up and watch the podcast on YouTube, you know who you are, don't even subscribe. So that's great because we have a great amount of growth to be able to go, but smash it. That's what my son says. If you're that next level elite, turn on the notifications. That way, every time we go live with the icon like Ethan Bull, you're going to get a notification and you'll know exactly when it's going to happen. I want to thank all our sponsors, FINDLAY, VOLVO Cars of Las Vegas, Mr. Chris Nagel with Private Money Club. You know who you are. And my son's favorite popcorn in the world, Poppington. You got to check it out. Poppington popcorn changed my boy's life. I never saw his eyes light up. Now he won't even eat regular popcorn anymore because everything else is just basic unless it's Poppingtons. So check those out. Make sure you do that. But thank you for rocking with the podcast and helping us to get in the top 1% globally. It has been my honor. It's my pleasure. We'll continue to bring you amazing icons like Ethan. And it has just been an absolute pleasure. And Ethan, you are officially off the hot seat.